What's it like being an IOC member, Tricia? I mean, it looks like being that is the best job to get in sport. Is it as great as that from the insides? Were you sort of doing cartwheels when you got selected to be an IOC member? I mean, what's it actually like for you?
I never thought I never dreamed I would be an IOC member. I never thought I would be president of the Canadian Olympic Committee, these things. But I love sport and I believe in sport. And I think it sort of then leads you in that direction. And when you love something, you care about something, you care about its future, you want to be there at the table where the decisions are being made. And so for me, that's the important thing is being there and, doing my best and trying to make a difference if I can. And then, being able to go to the Olympic Games and have a seat, holy smokes. I mean, that's priceless. And that is, it's just such a wonderful gift. And, you go to the Olympic Games and how many times do you just say to the person next to you, did you see that? I mean, did you see that? Holy smokes, And I just want that to survive for our next generations.
Did you have any idea when you stopped rowing that you would have this kind of level of involvement in the sport? Because what was your last year the '88 Olympics, Tricia?
Yeah, because I didn't really know much about it. You knew these people, they'd take your picture after the race, or they'd come and talk to you. And the Women's Commission was always very friendly. I didn't really know who they were, but I knew they were with FISA. And all those years, you just say hi to everyone. And so I got back home, finished my rowing career, and I was really getting back into life. I was going to law school, and I think I was just finishing and actually I'd already started working at a law office. So off I went into my real life, as we did in those days. And there was a group, the FISA Flying Doping Squad or something like that, and Ingrid Dieterle, and who else was with her? They came out to Vancouver, and she called me up and said, would you be interested in being on the Women's Commission? And I never even thought of it. So, well, you have to come to Montreal and sort of be interviewed by the chair at the time. And so I went off to Montreal where they were having the World Championships that year. And I guess it was 91. 91. My first year on the Women's Commission was in Prague. So was that 92? No, 93. 93. So 92 would have been the Worlds because the non-Olympics. And then, so Prague. And so Magdalena sort of looked me up and down and said, you'll do kind of thing. And off I went and got onto the Women's Commission. But I hadn't thought about it. And then, a few years later, I became chair and got on council and then became vice president eventually. So it's I'm very proud of World Rowing, FISA. I'm still getting used to it. It's way longer to write, FISA was so much easier, but
I know.
I'm really proud of our organization. As I've seen the way the sports system works around the world, I mean, the integrity that we have in our sport is really something to be proud of, and really athlete focused, and lots of tough decisions coming up, with qualification events and so on, but the care that's taken in the decisions, it's really remarkable.
Yeah. I think that's one thing, I very much echo in terms of, rowing and the integrity. I think, just looking at a couple of comments and questions that people have posted. One of the things about our sort of sport is it's quite conservative with a small c. And I think, our president, JC, is not known for being a radical at heart. I just wonder if rowing ought to be maybe a little bit more experimental and branch out. There's the notion of offering different distances at World Championships, of trying events with mixed crews, of possibly trying a match race format. What's your view on any of these kind of ideas, and FISA's kind of conservatism sort of maybe standing in the way a bit?
For sure, we're conservative. I think it's because we everyone in rowing is there because they love it. I mean, there's certainly no money in the sport, right? So we so love our sport, and we're passionate about our sport. It was like a knife in the heart when the coxed pair got, dropped off the Olympic program, wasn't it? Because we all remember the best coxed pair race. Do you remember the one, whatever? We love our sport. And so I think that's in part where our conservatism comes from, because we just can't give anything up. But I think with the new ideas coming up, I think we are more open to it. It's a matter of resources too, though. FISA does not have a lot of resources, so it's sort of like, okay, we've got what we've got, and we have to do that really, really well. I think the coastal rowing, we're venturing into the unknown, and there's an opportunity there to really show our stuff in a creative, different way, and so I'm looking forward to that. I think that will open up the opportunities. And then para rowing, I mean, it's been great too with the mixed crews, and we've seen how well that works. And so, we're getting out there, but it does take us a long time. But I think it's because, and JC's an engineer, and everything he does is very well planned. And I think it's really put us in good stead because of that, because he has such integrity, and he really works things through before suggesting we move ahead with things. So it's in our DNA for sure. We are conservative. We're trying.
Well, you mentioned coastal rowing there. I mean, I guess one coastal rowing format is likely to be in the Los Angeles Games in 2028. It didn't make the cut in the 2024 Olympics. What's your view on the beach sprints as against the coastal rowing out and around the boys? Do you have a sense as to which one would fit, and what would make rowing a bit more popular with the IOC?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that's where flexibility comes in too. So in the future, depend on which courses are available. So maybe we can flip between one or the other, or like sailing does, depending on the events. But I'm certainly not a coastal expert, and from what I've seen, there's lots of opportunities there to really make it exciting. And again, with the technology and the drones and those kind of explanations, which are also helping with sailing, and even using some of the things from sailing. And Gwyn Batten's doing a fantastic job with our coastal events. So we have time now to really sort of perfect what we want to happen, and hopefully we will have the events in LA. It would be a natural, because the flatwater course would be right beside practically where the coastal would be. I mean, very close, anyways. So it's a great opportunity, and like I say, I'm looking out the ocean right now, and there's big waves, so that would be exciting. But I also think the beach sprints bring another element. It really opens the sport up to all different physiques as well. So, although we may not have the same range of lightweight events anymore. I mean, we have the double in Paris, but we would have that opportunity for all different body types, because it's not just rowing along a straight flat course. There's all sorts of other skills involved in navigation and etc. and reading the waves and the wind and everything else.
Yeah, what's your view about, the lightweights will probably go out of the Olympic program after 2024. What's your view about lightweights and the World Rowing Championships or World Cup regattas? Normally, there's the focus on the Olympic class events. That's clearly quite a recognisable category in our sport. It certainly is in American universities and so on. But the lightweight four has now disappeared from the World Championships. Federations aren't funding it. What's your take on that, Tricia?
Yeah, it's challenging for sure. And remember in our day, we had such strong lightweight World Championships, and none of the lightweight events were in the Olympic Games. So what we saw actually was an unintended consequence of putting a couple of events in the Olympic Games. It sort of killed the other events, didn't it? Except for the feeder events. So not that we would say, well, therefore you shouldn't be in the Olympics. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm hoping that we can still support strong lightweight contingent of events at World Championships, because it's really important part of our community. And so we'll continue to do that and support lightweights in every way we can.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, some of the great races in lightweight men's single sculls. I'm not sure we'll ever get to see lightweight men's eights, but that was kind of one of the highlights of that World Championship program. I seem to recall.
Yeah, well, the lightweight eights were fantastic too, and of course, in those days, how did it work when they had the women and the lightweights in the first week, and then the heavyweight men in the second?
How did that work?
I don't know. Again, being from a glass half full kind of family, I always thought this is great. I do my events and then stay and watch the men and not be stressed.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it.
Yeah. One of the interesting things I think last year with the whole COVID scenario was that the Canadian Olympic Committee made the decision ahead of the IOC not to send athletes to the games. Can you just talk us through that decision?
Sure. Yeah, it's we'd seen what had happened around the world. We'd seen what was going on in Italy, and the numbers in Canada were going like this in our communities. And so this is March, and we just talked to the IOC, and the decision was, well, we want to wait to make the decision because, of course, we don't want to cancel. And so if we wait, then we can see if it's possible. And we were all on board with that. And then it happened so fast, but I think within the week, we were talking with our athletes commission, we were talking with our chief medical officer, Dr. Mike Wilkinson. And what we realized was if the athletes continued to train the way they were training, they were not only putting themselves at risk with the numbers going like this, but they were putting their families at risk, their support service providers at risk, their grandmothers at risk, the community at risk, basically. Yeah. So we were going to be these great super spreaders of Olympic athletes because they're training in the way they're always training. They have always been training. And so we realized they couldn't continue training. And we were having that discussion with the athletes. It was a Sunday morning, and we get the notice that the IOC was now going to consider postponement. And I was like, yes, okay, great. And then it said, but we need 4 weeks. And so I said to see how that might work. And they still had the July 2020 date on the table. So we said to the athletes, okay, and then our chief medical officer, okay, 4 weeks, right? We can do something. We can run, on the spot at home or whatever. He said, we can't continue to do this. It's dangerous. And it's unethical, basically, because our numbers, we didn't want to sort of follow what we'd seen happen in the rest of the world. So yeah. I said, well, that means if we say that we can't train anymore, we wouldn't be able to send a team in July this year, and the Olympics might go on. And they said, we know. Wow. And so we got the national sport federations together, and it was unanimous. And we made the announcement that if the games go ahead in July, we won't be able to send a team because our athletes won't have been able to train. So that was the decision. And as soon as we made it, I knew it was the right decision, but it wasn't completely popular around the world because people said, well, why couldn't you wait and so on. It was just because of where we were in the curve in Canada. It just seemed it was unethical to continue to train in the way we did.
Yeah. And so how have things developed now? Because there are still a lot of questions around whether the Olympics will happen or not. I know the athletes are training now in Canada in as COVID safe environment as possible. Mm-hmm. Is there any scenario where the Canadian Olympic Association might look at the safety of its athletes in the next few coming weeks or months and take a similar decision?
It's always about the safety of the athletes for sure, but just to be clear, like last year was about the safety of Canadians. It was the broader community. We're humans first, right? We're athletes. We're humans first. I'm confident about Tokyo. The work I see that's going around,
really,
in terms of the games happening, it's incredible what's being done by the IOC, by Tokyo organizers. I'm feeling good that the games are going to happen. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to be different. The qualifiers, it's a different story. figuring out how the qualifiers are going to happen in all of the sports is the biggest challenge in front of us right now. But I do think the games it's a very good chance that things are going to go ahead there. And it'll be, like I say, probably spectators, we won't know until April. I think it'll be challenging for spectators. The athletes will be come into the village just a short time before their event. It's proposed that athletes leave, within 48 hours after they're finished. So it's not going to be the same, but I think athletes still want that chance to be able to compete at the Olympic Games. So everything possible is being done to make that happen. So, and as you said, things have really changed. We know more about the virus. We know more about how it spreads. Dr. Mike, our chief medical officer, and the podium team, all our high performance directors, got together right away after last March and designed safe return to training protocols for every different sport. Of course, every sport's different. Wrestling's different than rowing, different than track. So, it's different than it was last year. I feel our athletes are safe and in a safe, relatively safe environment. You can't keep them from every possible danger, but I think we're in good shape there.
Yeah, it was really interesting where you mentioned, athletes coming in sort of relatively late and leaving quite early after their events as one sort of, mitigation that the IOC had proposed. You mentioned there's lots of work going on. Could you give us some more examples of things that, the IOC or the organising committee are working towards to make this as safe as possible Olympics and make sure that it will actually go ahead?
Well, they've got these playbooks out now that tell every single participant what it will look like for you from the time before you land, like before you get on the plane, and what happens when you land at the airport. They're looking at who gets to go where. So accredited individuals who normally would get to go to an athlete's village, for example. Well, no, we don't need that. So it'll be just the athletes. They're looking at those kinds of things. They're looking at, people being tracked during the game. That sounds negative, but it's ability to be able to locate people if something does happen, and how that would work with anyone who comes into the country for the games. It's just every possible activity that could be made safer. They're looking at how to do that. So, the level of detail is incredible, and I sit on the IOC Legal Affairs Commission, so we talk about some of the legal issues around some of these things. So that's how I'm aware of some of these things, and I'm very impressed with the work that's being done.
Well, that sounds amazing. Because one doesn't get to hear of all that work. You just kind of hear about opinion in Japan being maybe uncertain about the games, or so. Is there a date the IOC has in mind for the games to definitely go ahead, or is it now that the games will definitely go ahead unless something terrible happens?
The games are definitely going ahead.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, if you think about it, when we get there and we're able to compete, and we have an Olympic Games after all the world's been through, it'll be quite a celebration. I mean, we'll be celebrating online, I guess. but what an accomplishment when people work together. What we can accomplish, it's incredible.
Now, you talk there about Olympic qualifiers, and rowing, of course, has got to make its own announcement. I think next Monday, the 22nd of February, on the Lucerne Olympic Qualification Regatta. What's your feelings around there? Because I'm thinking, the New Zealand 8 is one example of a crew. Are they really going to come over to Europe and do that regatta? Or what about the Canadian team? Are they going to go to Europe and race in the World Cups at all, or will they just go straight to the Olympics? What's your sense of any of that, Tricia?
Yeah, I mean, all of that is still being discussed, as you can imagine. I can't speak for the Canadian team because I know it is still being discussed, I think, probably this week. And
oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of challenging decisions for everyone. And, it's not going to be perfect, I'm sure. But, you can be sure that the utmost care will be taken in making these decisions, and look at every possible opportunity to do things differently, or to make it happen the way it's planned now, or whatever's best, whatever we can decide that would be best for the athletes and for the sport. So
Yeah.
it's a challenging time. There's no question, and I know it's going on in all the sports, but certainly, like I say, the utmost care will be taken in the decision. So we'll see.
Yeah.